You should be able to do that now. This is amazing.
Yes.
Okay.
Perfect.
Way to go, team effort. I always need 5 brains to teach this
The
class.
technology is crazy.
So thank you all for lending your brains to the effort as well. Welcome those who are on the Zoom, welcome those who are in the room, the Zoom room or the real room.
Fantastic.
And
It's fabulous.
And Ira, I think it's the first time that you've been here. So Brucha Haba'a, welcome. As you can see, we are now recording this class and we'll send out the recording each week. So if you missed the previous week, you can catch up. We're getting better and better at this every time. So we are making our way through these fantastic and fantastical stories. And I just want to say one of the things that I said in was it last class, one of the previous classes, that the world of these Talmudic stories is a fantastical world. So sometimes, yes, we are hearing stories about actual rabbis who lived at a particular time in a particular place, and when the rabbi goes for a swim in the river. That river doesn't just mean he's going for a swim in the river. The river symbolizes something. This is a work of art at the same time that it is telling a story. And then sometimes suddenly the rabbi will meet the angel of death and have a conversation. So that's not today. Do you have a chat notice?
Yes, I do.
It's weird. So can you monitor the chat also?
Yes, of course.
Oh, that worked. I see.
Yes.
Okay. No.
No.
It's just Louis. We hired you for no money. What job are you doing?
It's a work in progress.
Okay, so here I'm giving these out. Gosh.
I'm your second brain.
I'll pass some down here, some down there. This is one of the first Talmud stories I ever learned, actually, way back when. And every time I learn it, it's different. I'm going to share the link in the chat for those who want to open this on their own on their computer, but you don't have to open it on your own because then I'm going to also share my screen. So what we're doing is today is step 1, which is simply reading the story, learning the story on its own terms. And then next week, we'll basically spend 2 weeks on this story. So today, really, we're just in the story itself, in the Talmud. Next week, we will see what Ruth Calderon does with it. What are you smiling at already?
We did this.
Did we? Oh, so I think we did this when we were talking about death. And the death and dying.
I totally remember this.
But now
You're
we're
a
not,
good teacher, if I remember.
you're a good student, Gloria. We're going to be looking at different aspects of the story this time.
No worries.
The characters we're about to encounter are Reish Lakish, Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish, and his friend Rabbi Yochanan. So actually, yeah, you can do that all the way because then we're really looking here. Yeah. Thank you. They are the first generation Amoraim. So that means they lived in the land of Israel around the year 200. What happened around the year 200? What was codified? The Mishnah. So this is
how I remember it. The M comes before T. So
yes, you told me that. So the Mishnah came before
no, I
the
think
Talmud.
you taught me.
Oh, I don't know. So we're teaching each other every day. So the Mishnah has been codified and we're now into Gemara land. Gemara and Talmud are the same thing pretty much, by the way. So the Talmud, although sometimes people say the Talmud is the compendium of the Mishnah and the Gemara. I don't know. I think colloquially it's used as synonymously Gemara and Talmud. I'm often trying to tangentially teach other things. So we're in the first generation of the Gemara. This is early Amoraim, Rabbi Yochanan and his buddy Reish Lakish. We're going to learn the story of how they met. We're going to learn about their partnership, which was very fraught, which was very passionate and heated in some ways. And it ends with
It must have been conflicting for one of them.
What?
It must have been conflicting for one of them.
Well, for both of them.
Yeah.
So it's a very charged relationship, and the story is about the way that Reish Lakish, the leader of a band of robbers, leaves that life behind and becomes Rabbi Yochanan's prime student and chavruta, study buddy. So Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish become very close with one another after Rabbi Yochanan has brought Reish Lakish over to the other side, to the side of Torah, away from a world of crime. And I'll just say that's the setting. That's by way of introduction. There's, as we read it, let's notice imagery. Let's notice maybe hidden meaning. Let's notice the things that are mentioned, like the props of the story. If you were building this as a theater piece, what are the props that you need on hand? Any questions in the Zoom room? Anything anyone needs to say before we jump into the text? Okay, I'll just say that this is a really
What time it was? When exactly you said 200?
around the year 200 CE. Yeah, just wait till, okay. No, I think it's fine.
It's fine.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. The way that I printed, do you have any more copies of it? Or did we use every copy? Okay. Please, because I might need that. I'm using a side by side on the screen, but what happens, as often happens, is that you get to a point where the English is way longer than the Hebrew. So it's not going to be perfect. It's not going to be perfect, but that's why I printed it differently on the paper. Okay. Yom Echad. I'm going to try to read in the Hebrew and in the English. We'll see how well I do. Yom Echad, one day. It's like once upon a time. Hava kasache Rabbi Yochanan bayardena. Rabbi Yochanan was, soche is to swim. He was swimming, he was bathing in the Yarden, in the Jordan River. Chazye Reish Lakish. Reish Lakish saw him. So who saw whom? Who made the first move? It's Reish Lakish who spots Rabbi Yochanan. I can't figure out the best way to do this in my own brain. Okay. Vishavar layardena abatre. And he jumped into the Jordan River after him. So the English translation here says pursuing him, because it's abatre. It's not just after him. It's like to be after him, going after him. There's a little aside here in the translation, in the non-bolded line, that says, at that time, Reish Lakish was the leader of a band of marauders. Okay, so that's who he was at that time. Amar Le.
What does that word mean?
Robbers, criminals, yeah, harassers of people, marauders. It's not a great word. I don't know.
Bandits.
Bandits, a band of bandits. So now he said to him, you're going to know that it's Rabbi Yochanan said to Reish Lakish based on the context of what he said. So he's starting to challenge him. So maybe Reish Lakish pursued Rabbi Yochanan, but then Rabbi Yochanan engages with him right away. Let your chayil like Eshet chayil, your strength, let your strength be for Torah. I challenge you to use your talents for the good side. Come over to the good side. Amar le, shufrech lenashe. Maybe your beauty should be for women.
What a great answer.
I know, right? You should come over to my side. So I just have to tell you, just before this episode in the Talmud, there was a discussion of how beautiful Rabbi Yochanan was, how his physical beauty. Apparently, he was also a very large man. In those days, that was considered also very beautiful. And it says that the women going to the bathhouse, going to the mikvah, Rabbi Yochanan would stand at the entrance to the mikvah.
Advertisement, come on.
So that, no, it says so that they would leave the mikvah going home to their husband and see Rabbi Yochanan's face and bear beautiful children.
Whoa.
That he was like a good omen.
Yeah.
But remember, in the
iffy
ancient
territory
world,
here.
Yeah.
they believed that whatever you do or say before sexual intercourse or
Yeah.
during or whatever would then be manifest on the child that was born from that union. So that's really, that was their science.
Mm.
But there is a playing a little bit with him being, the femininity and the beauty and Reish Lakish saying you should use your beauty for women is a little bit of a masculinity and a conquering with your beauty. So there's a hypersexualized way to read this whole thing if you want to, right? What was this relationship between these two men who are bathing together? I'm just
Yeah.
so right away, Rabbi Yochanan starts. Reish Lakish starts to bargain. Rabbi Yochanan starts to bargain with Reish Lakish. So Amar Leith, in the Hebrew, it's the Aleph Lamed. Amar Le, he said to him, Rabbi Yochanan said to him, okay, I'll make you a deal. I hadrat bach. Hadar means in Aramaic means to return, chazar. If you are choser, like a choser b'tshuva, if you repent or return, then I'll give you a reward. Yahivna lach achoti. I'm going to give you my sister, the Shafira Minai, who is even more beautiful than I am. Like, okay, don't come on to me. I have a sister. Let's go to her.
Tell me, this is Aramaic and Hebrew combined? This
It's
is not,
Aramaic.
it's Aramaic, because you said
100%.
before Hebrew, that's the reason.
I
Some
apologize.
words are in Hebrew,
It's right now we're in Aramaic,
yeah.
100% in Aramaic, but of course it's related to Hebrew.
No, some words are, no, because you said at the beginning, I'm reading you now in Hebrew.
Well,
that's
I
why-
meant I should have
this
said
part of the-
Aramaic.
this
Yes,
part of
yes.
it.
I meant the Hebrew instead of the English, but I should. You're right. You did.
Yeah, that's it.
Aramaic.
Yeah.
So what don't we hear? Reish Lakish, it simply says Kabil alei. He accepted. Reish Lakish accepted upon himself to go over to Torah and to marry the sister. Let's pause.
Well, it
What
doesn't
don't,
say to marry the sister, it just says it's petty Torah.
well, he accepted
The deal.
the
Implied.
deal.
It's implied, I know,
So
but
let's see, what don't we hear? It doesn't say Torah, it just says Kabil alei, he accepted it upon himself.
oh, okay. Oh, that's right. This is not in.
So
the book.
remember, in the English, any bold words are precisely the words in the Aramaic. Any non-bolded words are the help
Yeah.
of our translator finishing up the sentence. That doesn't make sense otherwise in English, which is why, by the way, that's why the English side is so much longer.
Yeah.
Okay. But what do we hear? We hear just, we don't hear any words from Reish Lakish. We don't know if he's hesitating. We don't know if he's arguing. We don't know if he's bargaining. Well, he doesn't seem to bargain. But we do see something else happening. He tried to get out. Ba'e lemehadar la'atuye mane. He tried to get out to bring his things, to bring his clothes. Velo matze. And he was not able to return. So the English adds, because he had lost his physical strength as soon as he accepted the responsibility to study Torah upon himself, that extra English sentence is actually the commentary of Rashi. And I brought that later in the page. So for those who are in the, I'm going to scroll down to it. If you're on the paper, just flip to the bottom of the other side of the paper. I didn't have a translation for this Rashi, but velomatze, he wasn't able to, means likfotz kevarishona. He couldn't jump like he did before. De mishakibela lab ol Torah, because once he accepted upon himself the yoke of Torah, tashash kosh, his strength was weakened.
Wow.
He no longer had strength. So what is this setting up right away as a dichotomy? What are the two people here representing? Two sides in what?
Well, they were
way?
like polar opposites originally.
So let's flesh it. Let's
One
flesh
was
it.
intellectual and the other one
Okay.
was physical. One was
Intellectual
more-
strength
the
versus
other was-
physical.
Yeah, that's more like erotic and spiritual. in a
Yes,
sense. I mean,
beauty, but Rabbi Yochanan is the one who has the beauty, but he also has the Torah. Reish Lakish is the one who beholds his beauty.
But he has a story.
It says that beauty could be for women, for the physical. So there's the
So
physical
he's
material.
envious. So, I mean, obviously, of his beauty.
Mhm.
So really to study would be to deflect that envy into a more wholesome path.
Well, remember the beauty, Rabbi Yochanan is beautiful. Reish Lakish is strong. That's what we know. Reish Lakish is the robber.
But he sees strength as a means of acquiring women or pleasure or.
Yes,
you know,
right,
Okay,
right.
so
He
pleasure
sees strength in
seeking,
beauty,
pleasure
right,
seeking,
for material
yeah.
pleasure, right.
He's a leader, so he can be leader of Torah instead of the leader of a
So-
band.
Right, so that's Rabbi Yochanan is saying to him, you're such a leader, you're so strong, use your strength for Torah, for
Yeah.
positive means. The comment in the chat, thank you, Tammy, is if you study Torah, you lose your physical strength. Why would this be attractive?
Yeah,
I don't know if he knew that he would, but the narrative is setting this up. Frances is shaking her head. The narrative is setting this up as two polar opposites, but also what's the word? Irreconcilable, like
Yeah.
conflicting.
conflicting poles that cannot coexist. That you can't have the physical and the spiritual. You got to choose one or the other.
but.
That's what it's setting it up as.
In the river, there is a confluence.
In the
And
river, they're
There's-
united.
Well, there's an
They're both
intermingling
hitting
of skills.
It's
Their
you know?
bodies.
It's fluidity, it's
a
literal
conflu-
fluidity,
That's
so,
right, it's a
so,
confluence.
yeah.
And Judy is saying the pen is greater than the sword, is mightier than the sword, right?
Mm-hmm.
The word mighty actually is actually the word there. The pen is mightier than the sword. That's Rabbi Yochanan's perspective. Get rid of your physical strength, come over to the spiritual, intellectual pursuits, because that ultimately will gain you more traction in the world. That's
Mm.
greater. Any connection between gaining another strength. Exactly. Yes. If you gain the strength of Torah, this isn't physically necessarily true immediately, but over the long term, if you go study indoors,
Studying indoors.
you're going to become a waif of a yeshiva student. So actually we'll see in Ruth Calderon's piece, she doubles down on that.
Okay.
She's going to go there.
That's
Talking about the pale skin and the dark skin,
Absolutely.
talking about the way his
Esau and
strength will
Hmm.
wane. Yes.
Yeah. that
Trading
is
one
not
strength for another. Exactly.
a
Thank you,
great
Naomi.
message.
No, it isn't.
Post Holocaust message, but anyways, um,
So let's continue. We'll make more of this idea that he can't go back to his old life. Physically, he cannot, whether it's because of his lack of strength or because he's no more motivation, but he left all of his personal belongings on the bank of the river, jumped in and then couldn't go get them anymore. It's like
He
that
shed his
clothing
old
won't
life.
fit him anymore.
shedding his
Shed
skin,
his
it's
old
like,
life.
yeah.
He's exactly, he's leaving it behind. So now we sort of fast forward. They've clearly left the river, they're in the study house, and they're on a journey of learning or teaching and learning. So akray means Rabbi Yochanan taught him mikra in Hebrew would be mikra. In Aramaic, akray means the primary text, that's Torah. The atnai, the Mishnah, he taught him Mishnah. Vishavye Gavra Rabba, and he made him a great man. Who made him a great man? Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan fashioned his new friend, who became his pet project, right, into a great Torah scholar. He made him what he is now.
He converted.
So the English adds a non-bolded sentence. Eventually, Reish Lakish became one of the outstanding scholars of his generation. Now, the reason the translator is doing that is because it's like there's a lapse of time that the text doesn't even really talk about. But you get to the next phrase, which is Yom Echad, one day. So that means, many years later, Yoma,
I'm learning Aramaic.
Yeah.
I know, the
Yes.
yeah, but summary
Yeah.
Hebrew, it's a mingle.
אבל יומא עם א'
יום,
בסוף זה יום. It's still Aramaic. Aramaic is
I
very
know,
related to
but
Hebrew, not,
They have a Hebrew.
but that's not Hebrew. Chad is,
I know,
yeah,
I know,
yeah.
I just.
is אותו דבר. Yeah.
the same
שומעים, אז-
shortish.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I understand.
So one day, Yom
Must be
Echad,
strange for you.
I'm scrolling down for our friends on this. Okay. Havu miflige be midrasha. There was a machloket, palig in Aramaic is as a divide or a machloket, a debate in the Beit Midrash, in the study hall. And they were debating the following matter. This could be any minute matter of Jewish law that they were debating every day. This was the matter that they were debating. When they're quoting, by the way, now, the English says concerning the following baraita. A baraita is an earlier source in the time of the Mishnah, which is in Hebrew. Whenever you see Aramaic, you know you're in the Amoraim of the Talmud. Whenever you see Hebrew, it was written earlier in the time of the Mishnah. The Mishnah is in Hebrew, the Gemara is in Aramaic. When they're quoting earlier Mishnaic texts, like they are about to, it's real Hebrew, ancient Hebrew. Hasayif v'hasakin v'hapigayon v'haromach u'magal yad u'magal katsir. So this is a list of various tools and weapons, right? A sword, a knife, a dagger, a spear, a sickle, a hand sickle, a harvest sickle, different kinds of sickles. So all of these knives or tools of cutting, whether it's a sword or a sickle, from what point are they susceptible to tum'ah? That means when are they completed? If it's a completed tool, then it becomes susceptible to impurities. But if you just have raw materials, it's just a hunk of metal. It's not yet a tool. It's not yet a completed object. So this is a minutia of Jewish law. And what they're really asking is, what makes a sword a sword? What makes a sickle a sickle? At what point is this material now an object that we would call a sword? So the response in that teaching is Misha'at Gemar Melachtan, from the moment that they're finished being manufactured. That's the halacha of metal vessels in general, our translator says. So the question about this braita is, when are they finished? Me'ematai Gemar Melachtan, how do you know they're completed, being manufactured? And we have a debate, which I'm sure they had every day, between Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish, between these two study buddies. Rabbi Yochanan Amar, Misha Yitzarfam Bakivshan, from the moment that you fire it in the furnace. And Reish Lakish Amar, Misha Yitzachzachan Bamayim, when you
Cool it in the water.
scour them in the water. And so after you fire it in the furnace, you have to right, immerse it in the water. I guess that really solidifies the metal or something. So that's the debate, and we don't have any inkling of what these conversations looked like before this point. But when this happens, Rabbi Yochanan snaps at Reish Lakish. Amar le, oh my gosh, I'm not going to say this right. Belistiyute. A robber knows his tools of the trade. I'm sorry, belistituye yada. A bandit knows about his banditry. A weapon expert knows about weapons. Oh, he's reminding him where he came from.
He's pulling rank.
But in
So-
fact, he's right, because
Yeah.
when they're fired, they're still flexible, but when you put them in the water, they harden
And Rabbi Yochanan, who grew up in the Beit Midrash and who's probably never held a sword in his hand in his life, let alone a sickle, would never know the realities of any tool.
But maybe a Moyle's knife.
Maybe.
It wasn't listed in there,
But it
I-
wasn't, yeah, exactly. But let's pause and ask, in this relationship between these two men, what did Rabbi Yochanan just do?
Judy said something.
When are they used for their intended purpose?
Yes.
Judy, that's an important point. We're not talking about when they're actually put to use, because that clearly is after they've been cooled, they've been Maybe I don't know if there's a stage after the water. Are they then polishing it down? I don't know. But the question is, when can we call a spade a spade? When can we call a spear a spear? When can we
When they are
call
suitable.
a
to be
sickle a
used,
sickle?
When they're functional.
So
Yeah.
as soon as you fire it in the furnace, it's solidified enough,
Yeah,
says
yeah.
Rabbi Yochanan, that it's already a sword. Yes, Tammy, it's a dig, exactly. It's like
It's humiliating. like,
a
oh, he's
little,
pulling away.
an insult.
Yeah.
And also, who made him
Mhm.
what he is today? Rabbi Yochanan did. Yes, Marilyn.
I think it's like a text without
Hmm.
icons. You can't really tell emojis. You can't
Mm.
really define the intent. Now we're projecting our own
Sure.
understanding onto it.
Okay.
And that's suspect.
You're asking us to be much more cautious
I'm
readers.
just saying you have to identify that we are imposing, we
Yeah.
are seeing it through our lens. This is not necessarily, it
How
can be
it's
read
being
many
So-
ways.
So
But Marilyn,
let's get to the very basics. What the text does say, without us projecting anything, what the text does
Yes.
say is, Rabbi Yochanan says, of course, a bandit knows his banditry. Reish Lakish is clearly insulted.
Yeah.
Because he's about to answer back in a very aggressive way.
Right, but that does not mean
So-
that Lakish understood the intent.
Oh,
I
maybe he meant
understand.
it as a
What we
pivot.
don't
yeah.
know is Rabbi Yochanan's
No, could it be just a
tone of
statement?
voice. We
We
don't
don't know.
know. We're not in the room.
Right,
Um,
exactly.
So this, I appreciate that. And whatever it was, is it because Reish Lakish is still insecure after all this time? I see Francis has a hand. Is it because Rabbi Yochanan is lording this over him? It's possible. Anything's possible. That's going to be a choice that our friend Ruth Calderon is going to have to make when I didn't mention this for those who weren't in our class before. She rewrites the story, which we will get to read next week. She rewrites it in her own literary style. So she's going to make a choice about how she thinks Rabbi Yochanan said it. Just a minute, I want to give Francis a
Okay.
chance to unmute and
Yeah,
share something.
Rabbi, I was for me, it strikes me that, of course, because Reish Lakish hasn't studied Torah as long as Yochanan. So is this not just a question that, okay, you were a bandit, but I've studied Torah since I was, 3 years old. So it's a question of the length of study or not. I don't know, that just.
Well, I think Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish having a Torah disagreement would be very normal. Rabbi Yochanan saying to Reish Lakish, I have my expertise, you have your expertise, if said in neutral tones, as Marilyn is trying to encourage us to at least say that might be a possibility, that might have been also very normal. I'm gonna bet, considering the response that Reish Lakish is about to have, I'm gonna bet that Rabbi Yochanan, there might have been a little edge to his voice there, like, oh, the bandit. Remember, it's been 20 years, but we haven't forgotten where you came from. Do you want to make a comment?
No.
Okay,
Yeah,
go
I
ahead,
do.
Gloria.
I want to speak to Marilyn's comment because I think there's a built-in ambiguity in the Mishnah and the Talmud expressly for that purpose that we should have dialogue. Otherwise, what's the point of a chavruta? If it's absolute, then there's nothing to discuss.
What I want to bring to the consciousness is that we are doing this
Yeah.
specifically. That's all.
Yes,
From
yes,
from point to point,
Absolutely.
identify
Yeah,
that
but
rather
there's
than.
possibilities. There are many ways of looking at situations, so we shouldn't be necessarily hard and fast like the. But I just wanted to make a fast comment. This is a beautiful metaphor of the first part of the story, which is until Reish Lakish enters the water, he's still
Yes.
malleable.
Yes.
He's
Thank
still
you.
influential.
So,
Oh,
so
very
there
good
is the
insight.
water imagery that we're
Yeah.
back to now.
Yeah.
And Reish Lakish, once he got in that water, was changed.
Nice.
That's the conversion moment.
I
That's
love
his
it.
mikvah moment, so to speak. And Torah is water. We talked about this with the fish pond in our last story. Torah is water. He jumped into the sea of Torah. Now we're using that spear, which I just a minute. I asked you to think about the props, the items. When's the last time we saw a sword on the bank of the river where he left it with all of his cronies that he was leading? it didn't specifically say he had a sword, but he probably had his tools of banditry,
Yeah. Mhm.
right? And now we're seeing it, but it's not present in the Beit Midrash. Maybe they had on a tablet, something that they could draw. Look, it's a sickle.
Mhm.
Look, it's a spear. I mean, that's like it's a pale attempt at, as you said, depicting tools they don't really know. They don't have any expertise in. Certainly never been in this room, but we have someone who represents that in the room. That's Reish Lakish.
Mhm.
Isn't it fascinating?
It's great.
I mean, these
it's
can all
beautiful.
be, this is a Netflix series.
Yeah.
Waiting to happen.
There's also another metaphor that one could say is that Resh Lakish saw Rabbi Yochanan when he went in the water. So there he will
Mm,
emanate the beauty, radiance of
attracted to
Torah.
it.
yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes.
Yeah.
So let's continue. So Rabbi Yochanan says, I am going to use a sort of taunting tone of voice. Oh, bandit knows his banditry. I'm sorry, Marilyn. I did. Because Reish Lakish then says, Amar le, Umay ahansli, what benefit did you give me? Like, you're saying that because you think you took me from banditry to holiness. Well, you know what? I was always great on my own, even without you. Hatam Rebbe Karuli. There they called me Rebbe or
Mhm.
Rabbi, master.
Mhm.
Hacha Rabbi Karuli. And here too, they call me master. In other words, I was always a leader,
Mhm.
with or without you. Okay, so I was a leader there. I was a leader here. I owe you nothing.
Hmm.
Comment.
I don't think he chased him in the water, but I think, why did Reish Lakish to begin with jump into the water?
He's attracted.
Okay, so actually I'm gonna hold that question. Ruth Calderon makes a suggestion of why he jumped in the water in the way that she tells the story. The answer is we don't know.
Okay.
Tammy, maybe he
Yes.
wanted to rob him. That's a good
Then why would
possibility.
he just take his stuff from the river?
Right, he doesn't have anything in his
Go the
pockets,
water.
right? Yeah.
He's not heated after all his banditry. It's hot work, you know?
So clearly Rabbi Yochanan has implied that he made Reish Lakish who he is. And Reish Lakish says, I owe you nothing.
They both need a lesson in humility. God is good.
Marley. So now Rabbi Yochanan is going to answer it with a Talmudic argument. I did benefit you because even though they called you leader there, now you're a leader here with God. Ahanai lach, I did provide you benefit. De'akravinech tachat kanfei hashechina. I brought you under the divine wing. So that you never would have had without me. And there's no response. That's where the quarrel ends. But they both suffer from this now. So that's the end scene.
Yeah. Curtain down.
Curtain,
Yeah.
right. And what did this conflict do? And one has to wonder, did this conflict sort of fester over time and just exploded on that day, on that Yom Achad? Or was it out of the blue? Like, wow, I didn't know Reish Lakish was harboring this resentment toward me. I mean, Reish Lakish didn't know Rabbi Yochanan resented me in this way, that he snapped at me. And I'm married to his sister, right? We're shpacha, we're family, all these years. So it says chalash da'ate. Chalash means weakened. Da'ate, his mind. The translator translated as a result of this quarrel, Rabbi Yochanan was offended. It usually chalash da'ate doesn't mean physically weak. It's an expression in the Talmud that does mean he was sort of put off or thrown off or doesn't know how to respond, that kind of thing. But it is the word chalash here, weak, which is interesting because we're talking about strength and weak. So it is an expression that literally means Rabbi Yochanan's mind was weakened. His mind, which is his strength, right from the beginning. We knew that. So chalash ta'ateh de Rabbi Yochanan. It's always a challenge when there's no punctuation in the Talmud. So I often make that Yes, yes, this is why people spend years and years trying to figure out how to read this stuff. And the word chalash now is used for Reish Lakish. Chalash Reish Lakish, that is physically, he became ill or he became weakened. So everybody knows that Reish Lakish is ill because of this altercation with Rabbi Yochanan. That seems to be an obvious cause and effect in the way that the Talmud is teaching this, or in the metaphysical understandings of the time, right? They didn't have germ theory and they didn't have any scientific inquiry other than my actions impact my world, my body, my health, my everything. So it's going to be the sister of Rabbi Yochanan, the wife, who comes crying to her brother. Help, help, help. It's because of you. It's because of this terrible argument. It's because you started up with him. And now he's sick. Atai achte, the sister of Rabbi Yochanan came kabachya, crying to Rabbi Yochanan. Amra le, and she said to her brother, to Yochanan, Asa bishvil b'ni, Asay bishvil b'ni, do it for the sake of my child, oh, banai, my children. Do it meaning cure Reish Lakish, kiss and make up, whatever, fix the situation, not for my sake, but for the sake of your nieces and nephews, our children. And he is stone-faced, I would imagine. He responds by quoting a verse. He responds with Torah. Amar la, azva yitmol ma'ich. Ani achayeh. Leave your orphans. I will raise them.
Old,
Yeah.
harsh.
And that's a quote from the prophet Jeremiah, it's Jeremiah.
That's another
here.
context.
What is he also saying? Oh, they don't need their father, they have me.
No, but that's so mean. What was the actual context from Jeremiah?
It's a good question. I would imagine, I didn't look it up. I would imagine it's God saying, don't worry about your orphans, I'm going to take care of them, something like that. Jeremiah, remember, is the prophet of the destruction of the first temple. So it might be some kind of you know what, I should look it up. I'll look it up for next time. I don't want to guess. Because context of a quote like that matters in the Talmud. Everywhere it matters. So now she's arguing back. Asay bishvil almenuti, like have mercy on me and my widowhood. Okay, you won't have mercy on Reish Lakish's children, but me, I'm your sister. Amar la ve'almenotayich alai. Your widows should trust in me, says God. So I think it is about God saying, I'll take care of your orphans, I'll take care of your widows, that kind of thing. So Rabbi Yochanan refuses to help.
Boy, he's tough love. That's.
No.
Oh, I see. I stopped in the middle of the quote. Almenotayich alai tivtechu noach. That's how they'll find comfort in me. God says. So now, nafshe di Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish, which means Reish Lakish lost his nefesh, lost his life, died. And Rabbi Yochanan missed him. The Havakamitzaer Rabbi Yochanan Batre Tuva. He missed him or was greatly pained because of him. Tuva, from the word tov, a lot. He missed him a lot. Let's pause and just ask, why is Rabbi Yochanan upset? Doesn't tell us, Marilyn.
Guilt.
Yeah.
It doesn't tell us. So what are the possibilities?
Guilt.
Maybe he feels guilty because Reish Lakish died because of him.
He misses the wonderful partner, the
He misses
learning,
his
the
friend
back
and
and
learning.
forth. This was a thrilling guy that he disbanded, reformed. And that one day line that he brings up the past, I can only imagine what Ruth Calderon will do with that. But what do I know? but,
Yeah.
but I did, that was a big no.
Yeah.
That was a big, all the red lights go off
Mhm.
for me
Yeah.
when I read that.
This is something.
Bringing
also,
up the
um,
past, the guy's been studying for
But
years.
isn't it
We see
typical
it.
of families who
He-
do that? Every
Right.
company's always trying to be the
He's-
top dog, and so. they
He's
bring up the
one-upping him.
past,
But
he's
in,
one-upping him.
it's a principle in Jewish tradition, you don't remind a Baal Tshuva of his past,
Right,
meaning of
right.
someone
It's,
from where they came.
Yeah.
You don't remind a convert, remember, when you weren't
Right.
Jewish?
Right.
it
You don't-
killed them.
simply don't do
Words
that.
kill.
Yeah.
We see it here.
So I love that you said that, because not only does the sword kill, but Rabbi Yochanan has the power of the words that he uses like a sword.
Mm.
Is it possible to see this as a purely selfish moment for Rabbi Yochanan?
Absolutely.
Oh, for sure.
He didn't miss him because of the children. He didn't miss him because of the
His
wife.
sister, yeah.
He misses his
Because of
That's
himself.
right.
study buddy.
Yeah.
That's why he's upset. Maybe.
See? He's a smart guy, but that doesn't make him a good guy.
So now the community has lost Reish
Mhm.
Lakish, and they're concerned about losing Rabbi Yochanan too.
Mhm.
Amru Rabbanan, the rabbis, everyone in the study hall see that Rabbi Yochanan is not himself anymore.
Mhm.
And they say, oh my gosh, how can we help him? Man lizel liatve da'ate, who will go to give him yishuv da'at, and would be the Hebrew, like settle his mind. He's gone to a different mental place now. Who can comfort him? Who can bring us back? Our Rabbi Yochanan, who's not the same as he was before. Nizal Rabbi Elazar ben Pedat. Let Rabbi Elazar ben Pedat go because he's really sharp. Demechadedin shemaitita. He's sharp. So the translator says, meaning he's as clever as maybe Rish Lakish was. So we'll show him he can have another study buddy. He'll be okay. We're going to replace Rish Lakish.
There's a comment.
I thought that those who have changed are given more merit. Thank you, Terry. Yes, so it's not in the eyes of God that we're afraid to remind someone where they came from. In fact, we greatly admire someone who is a convert or who has changed their lifestyle to become closer to Judaism. But at the same time, we acknowledge that they might be sensitive about it. So, if I'm teaching a theology class and I say, oh, maybe this is kind of like Christianity. Hey, remember when you weren't Jewish and you were such a pro in the Jesus theology? Can you help me out? Like,
Yeah, right.
no, I don't want that.
Yeah.
So
But-
it's just about respect more than anything else, but I appreciate that commentary. I'm conscious of the time, so I want to finish the story and then we'll have more time for reflection. Notice the word sharp. Chadad, sharp is the word we would use for a weapon. Also,
That tool.
Mhm.
right? He's going to sharpen him, maybe. Amar, wait, where did I just go to in my Hebrew? Okay, so maybe he's as sharp as Rish Lakish was. So this Rabbi Elazar goes, Azal, Yativ Kameh sits before Rabbi Yochanan. Kohl Milta Dahave Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Everything that Rabbi Yochanan would say, Amar Le, Elazar ben Pedat would say to him, Tanya de Messiah la. So the Rabbi Elazar, this new student partner, said, oh, I have something that would support your opinion. I have this that would support your opinion. I have that would support your opinion. He's agreeing and agreeing and agreeing and agreeing. And Rabbi Yochanan doesn't like that. He doesn't want someone who's going to agree with him. He wants someone who's going to challenge him, who's going to fight back, who's going to be a fighter like this Reish Lakish was. Amar. So Rabbi Yochanan says to him, At Kvar Lakisha Bar Lakisha,
Mhm.
are you anything like Reish Lakish? I'm sorry. Oh my gosh. At Kvar Lakisha, are you like a Lakish? Bar Lakisha ki hava amina milta, when the son of Lakish, he's like calling him either disrespectfully or maybe as a nickname. I'm leave both those possibilities. When Lakish would sit with me And I would say something. He would raise 24 arguments against me. And then mafrikna le esrin ba'arba peruke. And I would bring 24 responses to his challenge. And because of that, umimela rav chashmaita, the matter would be widened, our understandings would be expanded. I need a Lakish. I
A
need
worthy
someone who's gonna-
opponent.
who's gonna fight back and actually expand. Can tell me something I don't already know.
Yeah.
Tell me what I already said. And ve'at amart Tanya de Messiah, you just say this is what supports me. Atu lo yadana de Shapir. So don't the Shapir ka'amina. I don't I already know that what I believe is right, is good, is beautiful. I don't need you to tell me that. I don't need a yes man.
That's right.
And now we have the downfall of Rabbi Yochanan. Nobody can be replaced. Rish Lakish cannot be replaced. I'm gonna scroll down for the sake of our.
I don't know if
Observers
Barbara
that have
wants to
it.
say something. There's
Um,
a. Does she want to say? something?
Oh, Barbara, did you want to say it? No, okay,
No.
that was just a little, great. Thank you. So,
But I do.
I'm like struggling between this English, making sure people on the Zoom
What?
can see the English.
You always have something.
So
I do.
he then goes. Rabbi Yochanan went around, here we are. Havaka Azil v'karamane, and tearing his clothing, the kabache and weeping, the amar hey cha'at bar Lakisha, where are you, Ben Lakish? Hey cha'at bar Lakisha, he says it twice. He's like roaming the streets looking for his friend. And he screamed until his da'at, his mind, was taken from him. And so the rabbis asked for mercy,
Mhm.
and he died.
Yeah.
They asked for mercy, like take him out of his misery. And Rabbi Yochanan is gone. Can't live without his friend, whose death he was responsible for. Yes. Lord.
The one who is suffering most, I think, in this story to me is Rabbi Yochanan, because here he's got a lot of kavod, he's got a lot of respect, but he's very conflicted. I mean, he wants to have a chavruta, but he wants to be right. So yes, Lakish gives him 24 questions and he enjoys the sparring, but he has to be right in the end, and that's his downfall. Because
Right.
if you're truly having a
Right.
chavruta, you
He's
have
not
to be
really
open to the fact that the other person may be more correct or more closer to the correct interpretation than you are, and he
Right.
could not do that.
So
So-
I once took a class, it was like a chavruta workshop, where the teacher, it was Professor Eli Holzer, who was brilliant, if you ever encounter him, made us study this story. First of all, he made us study it line by line without knowing what line was coming next, which was excruciating, because I want to look ahead and I want to know
Yeah.
what's coming. And that in each line, we had to really listen to the other person. And that was something, one of his points was that was something Rabbi Yochanan
He
really
he
couldn't do.
No.
He was using
Yeah,
Reish Lakish to sharpen his own
exactly.
points.
Exactly.
Argue with me so I can prove my point. Argue with me again so I can answer back. And instead of actually being open to absorbing a different point of view, it was usury in some way of this amazing opponent who still he felt superior to. On
Yeah,
some level.
absolutely, absolutely. It was not
So he was a very insecure person in spite of his beauty and his great reputation.
He was insecure because he wasn't really open to a new perspective or to sharing his authority, maybe his position. He still had, he felt threatened, maybe he
Yeah,
felt threatened.
for
by
He
sure.
wasn't
Reish
open in
Lakish.
any way. He wasn't open to his sisters pleading. He wasn't
Right.
open to
Right.
this Shimon guy. He wasn't open to anybody.
Just gonna start to share screen if everyone can then see each other better.
That was,
Um,
that's my
So
take.
let's, before we close, let's just, in looking back, let's think about the imageries or the, some of the kind of threads, not just imagery, the themes, that's the word I was looking for, some of the themes. Yes, Tammy's saying he's a narcissist, he's got a big ego, he's, yeah, he's self-serving. So there's a theme of rivalry.
And weaponry.
There's a theme of
different
weapons,
kinds of
image and
yeah.
theme of weapons throughout.
Psychological
There's the
weaponry,
water.
psychological weaponry and physical, like the bend.
Yes,
Yeah.
right, the mind versus the sword. Go
And
ahead.
it's almost a love story.
Yes, I
They
didn't want to
sort of-
say it. I
they
didn't want to
start-
say it.
start out of love.
Well, it's hinted to it at the
Yeah.
beginning.
Yeah.
for sure. Yes.
He's more like a wife. It's more like a kind of husband and wife
Well,
thing.
you know, people use this expression like my work wife, when you
Yes,
talk
yeah,
about your
soulmate,
closest
yeah,
colleague.
Yeah,
And even without the sexual overtones,
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
here there certainly are.
yeah.
There's beauty, there's water, there's nudity right at the beginning, right? There's someone jumping into the river after someone else.
Yeah.
And also there's, yeah, they're like a married couple.
Yeah.
They're in a relationship. Francis, go ahead. And then I see
just thought
Paula.
well, you talked about the imagery, Rabba. So for me, the imagery of all those weapons, and they're sharp, right? And they were related to Lachish. So in a sense, maybe his arguments were actually sharper many times, in which case
Mm,
Yohanan didn't like that.
yes, yes.
Or he
And
saw them as weapons.
Farla, go ahead.
Yeah.
I didn't see the text at the very beginning enough because it says something about about study and only study. Yes.
So Farla, I just put in the chat because there were a few people who also came in late and may not have had access to that link. But if you click on that link, you'll be able to see the whole text from the beginning. And yes, there was this, sorry, go ahead.
Well, what I wanted to say was that it sort of disturbed me because it was something like, you know, that you have to concentrate on study and that's it. That's the main
Right,
focus
it's all or nothing.
in life. It's all or nothing. But my point is that you're not developing another side of yourself. And so when this happened and the arguments and all he could think of was his life as a teacher, and this other side of him was not developed, a strength.
So, yeah, go ahead.
You know, Rabbi Yochanan was saying that Lachish had weapons, but he also had weapons, and that was his mouth, his words.
Yeah, you were saying that, yeah.
His words were as a weapon.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead, Madeline.
Also, I find it interesting that Rabbi Yochanan said that if Lachish would raise 24 difficulties against me, I had 24 answers.
Right.
He didn't say I have 23 answers and maybe one, I'm not sure.
Right, right, there's a lot of hubris and
by
Mhm.
this adversary.
And you know
adversarial-
what? In using this phrasing of sharpening, what do you use to sharpen a knife? You use a stone, something that you don't really respect, not an equal. At least I don't think. Can you sharpen a sword with another
That's
sword?
good. No,
I don't
you
think
can't. That's a very good image.
So if Reish Lakish was his lump
His whetstone.
of
like-
stone,
Yeah, yeah.
and he was being sharpened by Reish Lakish, he wasn't really ever respecting Reish Lakish as a full peer. He
No,
will
never.
always see him as that bandit
Yeah.
or that
But-
robber.
And-
I see that Max has a hand. Go ahead, Max.
I see that one of the themes here is relationships, really flawed relationships throughout the story. But I was also thinking about the fact that I had that same lesson with Ellie Holzer and the line by line.
Ah, okay.
But it's funny.
Wasn't it difficult? Wasn't it?
It was. I thought it was fascinating and, you know, a little frustrating, but it's supposed to.
Yeah, I meant it. I was learning a lot from it, but it's
Yes.
like if I was sitting on my hands trying to not.
Right. Not to move the
listen.
paper
Yeah.
down further. But it's funny because from that lesson, I've always taken this image of the responsibility of a chabruta partner to not be, not just offer supporting, but also to offer objections or
to challenge your partner.
text. But sitting with this text now, I'm overwhelmed by the fact that that actually Rabbi Yochanan is a terrible example of a good chabruta partner. He wasn't sparring. It wasn't an equal back and forth. It was you expand me and I will be expanded, but I'll still be right at the end. I have to think about how I use this text in teaching.
Well, I think it is an example of how not to be. But within it, there is an ideal, like if both of them could have been Yochanan's, if both of them were sharpening the other.
Right,
then
that's the ideal, but that's not what was happening here.
No, that's not.
They were sharpening each other, but one was not acknowledging that he was being sharpened. That's the problem. It's-
Maybe.
They were
right,
sharpening
right,
each other.
okay.
But also, this, since you brought it up, that it's sort of like this marriage idea, but it's like a man who thinks he's doing, like, it's like a man who marries a woman from a lower class than himself
Mhm,
and thinks it's always in the back of his mind that he elevated. So
mhm.
that when the time comes that like the first thing that pops out is you never had any class, your family was low class.
Right. That's something that the Lord over the partner.
But it's
in a
always
moment of-
there, it's always there unconsciously, but when you get angry at that person, out it
Yeah,
comes like
yeah, I
something
love
over
that.
which they have, I mean. it's
And
supposed to have
that
been
speaks to
forgotten.
the idea
Yeah.
that this had always been present.
Yeah,
It never really went
lurking,
away.
always lurking.
So what Ruth Calderon, what we'll see next week is she makes this into a very extended story. We're gonna have a long story time next week because I don't want to skip any bit of it. So we'll really try and start right on time. And she also sort of acknowledges a bit of a love triangle between the sister and the husband and Yochanan, Rish Lakish, and the sister, which I think is really interesting.
Maybe
She
that's
takes
at
us
the
in
root of the whole thing.
fascinating places. A bit the way that like Rabbi Yochanan is the man that the sister would have been intended, this kind of person, right? The scholar. She would have been intended for a scholar all along, and she gets this rough street man instead. And the family dynamic, she also expands on the relationship between brother and sister. She actually builds back their past a little bit. So she goes all kinds of interesting places, and the text gives permission to do that because it says none of this. Because it says none of it, good. She midrashes on the midrash, as I've said.
Must be neat for you to study this.
Oh, it's so amazing. It's amazing, amazing. And it also is a reminder of the value of returning to something that you've already learned, which we did already learn this, because there's always something new.
But I'm sure I'm seeing
embedded in
it
it.
through this a very similar lens that I did the first time, because I have a visceral response to this. I just,
Yeah.
Well, that was fun.
I think.
Thank you.
it's, the lesson
Thank
of
you, our friends on Zoom. We'll see you next
That
week.
was wonderful, wonderful.
Thank you.